joined by my wife Mary in this video. Thank you. And we're going to be talking about some of the fallout from our demonstration in Aberdeen, in particular the Green MSP Gillian Mackay saying she's going to report us to the police, etc. So there's lots to talk about, but we're going to start off in the comments section of the national newspaper, who did a report on our event where we showed our 18,000 lives, symbolising the 18,000 lives lost to abortion last year. So here's a couple of comments. So Anne-Marie Baxter. Most of these protesters are American. Send them home to protest in their own country. They're out of order. If they were in America, they would not be allowed to do what they do. They would be dragged away in handcuffs. Where are all the police? Surely this is against their visa permits, or we are already another state of America. Are you worried about being deported? Which state in America are you from, Mary?
From Edinburgh. Yeah, where do you start with that comment? There's just so much misinformation in it.
Yeah, I think people genuinely do believe this. There are a lot of people who really do believe that the pro-life movement in Scotland is somehow full of Americans. I mean, I don't know. I mean, saying that this would be illegal in America, and that's completely wrong. There's much more freedom in this regard in America, but just bizarre. I mean, the other classic accusation is, you're being funded from America. So, Mary, it's time to come clean. How many thousands of dollars have you received over the years for taking part in the vigils, pro-life vigils?
Absolutely none.
Hundreds of dollars? Tens? Any? No, not at all. No. Okay, so how do you manage to do it then? Where does your funding come from?
Well, it does cost me a bus fare to get there, which I take out my own pocket.
Right, moving on. So let's go to Fiona Johnson. She said, I wonder how many of these pro-life Americans own guns. So again, Mary, we've been outed. So it's time just to say, how many guns do you own?
I don't have any guns.
No? What's that then?
Oh, this is my wee craft gun.
Okay, and I have to confess as well, I've got quite an arsenal, actually. I've got this gun in the house that fires elastic bands. I've got this one from the garden hose. We've got this one for sealing round showers. That's the best we've got. But again, people really do believe it. I mean, maybe you need to read the National for a long time to come to these views. But people really do believe, when they see pro-life activists in Scotland, they really do believe that they're probably American, and in some cases, they're probably sort of into guns as well. I mean, it's just utterly bizarre. Just to clarify, the thumbnail for this video, that was AI generated. There are not pro-life activists that look like that in America. Anyway, on to our demonstration in Aberdeen and the response to it. So we laid out the lights at Castlegate, one of the main town squares in Aberdeen, public space. At one point, a girl came and tried to take one of our placards. One of our people tried to reach to take it back from her. She fell over. She then phoned the police and said that she'd been assaulted. The police looked at CCTV footage and basically said, that they realised what was going on, that there was really nothing that needed to be followed up. But then the two girls were very, very physically aggressive to one of our people, really a bit of pushing and shoving. Now, some people might say, placard, just let them take it. I think if we had done that, then everything we got there would have disappeared. All the lights, the PA system, the whole lot probably would have just walked away. So we couldn't really let that happen. We had a young man coming along with this loudspeaker system, and he stood right next to the person speaking at our event, just trying to disrupt. Our PA system was more powerful, so it didn't make too much difference. People hurling abuse from various directions and windows. But an interesting thing was, some of the people who were beside themselves with rage during the event, by the end of it, they were engaged in quite lengthy civilized discussions with people who were there sort of on our side, if you like, which was very, very interesting. So, I mean, what did you make of the whole thing?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I thought the police were very good. They were called by this girl who was saying she'd been assaulted, but actually it was them who really calmed things down. So after they arrived, these the angry ones calmed down, and the boy with the loudspeaker who was trying to drown out our speakers, he stopped. So the police were really good, and I just felt they were just very measured in the way that they spoke to us as well.
Yeah. I mean, my experience with the police on the ground is generally they're great. Sometimes when things go up a couple of levels, I'm not quite so sure. But yeah, that was good. I mean, just these responses, though. We've done the lights display 3 times now in town square or public places, and each time it's become more extreme. The reaction, that there's no rhyme or reason to that. It's just how it happens to have happened in the places. But these really extreme reactions, what's going on? I think part of it is because of the buffer zone laws. So people see a buffer zone law and they think, right, so a pro-life person holding a pro-life sign, that is something so bad, so intimidating, harassing, upsetting, and extreme, it needs to be made illegal. So if it needs to be made illegal in one place for those reasons, surely if people are doing it in another place, then that's also really, really, really bad. Okay, the law hasn't quite got round to criminalising these people yet, but it really should do. So I think the buffer zone laws have really stoked up hostility towards any aspect of pro-life expression, public pro-life expression. I mean, how's it been at the vigil in Glasgow? I know you've been there recently.
Yeah, I was there last Thursday, so that was the second day, and I think there's about 1,000 cars apparently that pass that spot every hour. And I would say probably 50% of the motorists in these cars were showing some kind of either disapproval or disgust or going further into, like the middle finger or winding down a window and screaming. That was probably the most extreme reaction. So there was a few of them at that end of the spectrum.
Yeah, that's interesting. When I've been at the vigil in Edinburgh, when it was outside the clinic, it would vary a lot day to day, but sometimes I'd feel it was like 50-50. Maybe most people would give no reaction whatsoever, but then you'd get a number who'd give a thumbs up or some sort of nod or whatever, and then you get a number who'd give some sort of negative reaction. But it sounds like those proportions have changed quite dramatically. What's going on in Glasgow there.
Yeah.
Okay, it so happens I found a picture on the internet of a pro-abortion protest in Aberdeen in exactly the same spot where we had ours. So I just thought I'd show it to you. There's a few interesting features to it. So here it is. They've got a green smoke. I'm not quite sure what that's symbolising. But some of the placards are quite remarkable. One of them says pro-choice is pro-life. I mean, get your head around that one. Another placard says safe and accessible abortion for all genders. Right, okay. Aberdeen Labour. That's surely a bit embarrassing for the Labour Party. Looking at the sign at the lower right, it said, "Blessed be the fight," and it's got a picture of the clenched communist fist. But then there's, it's obviously just ink, but it's supposed to be blood spattered over it. I mean, how bizarre. Taking a blood image, a spattered blood image to a pro-abortion rally. I mean, really, what are they thinking?
Yeah, it seems very unfortunate when the reason we're involved in these things is because of the shedding of innocent blood. But at the same time, that looks like someone is inciting violence towards those who are involved in the pro-life witness.
Yeah, I'd say absolutely. If you say "blessed be the fight" and you've got like blood all over the place, that is implying this is literal fighting, violence. So that is an incitement to violence. But it's our sort of fairy lights that are the real concern, apparently. Right, so the Humanist Society of Scotland have been on the case for this, or as they should be called, the Hysterical Society Scotland, and they were quoted extensively in the national newspaper. So let's see what they had to say here. They said buffer zones are enforced 24 hours a day, and if protests can be seen or heard within a buffer zone, police have the power to move them on. Groups such as the Scottish Family Party are currently desperate to give the impression that their voices are being silenced. Just not true. Not true. I mean, we were holding this event in public and we knew there would be no problem doing that. We were not expecting to be moved on or banned. So this idea that we're desperate to give the impression our voices are being silenced, I mean, just totally untrue. And they said, in fact, they're free to protest against abortion anywhere in the country except for the entrances of abortion clinics. Right, we knew this was in the buffer zone, yep, but also we knew that the clinic at the centre of that buffer zone was closed. Therefore, the buffer zone law can't be broken. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in a minute. Right, so Scottish Greens spokesperson, this is from the National, Gillian Mackay, MSP, said the Scottish Family Party are a band of anti-choice activists who pretend to be political. I'm not sure how we pretend to be political. I mean, we're a political party. We stand for election. I don't know. But I think with Gillian Mackay, it's really important to not spend too long trying to work out how what she's saying makes sense, because an awful lot of what she says just doesn't make sense. So
she's trying to belittle, isn't she? That's her aim there.
Yeah. They would, if given the chance, roll back decades of hard-won women's rights. In other words, we'd protect the unborn. But Gillian Mackay goes on, this is a disgraceful new low and shows exactly the reason why buffer zones are so necessary. I mean, why laying out 18,000 fairy lights, having some speeches in a time of reflection is a disgraceful new low. Gillian Mackay doesn't attempt to explain. But she said it shows the reason why buffer zones are so necessary. But the buffer zone was totally irrelevant to this. Now, again, we have to remind ourselves, do not try and make sense of what Gillian Mackay says, because it doesn't make any sense.
I think I can make sense of it. I think if you put in, this is a disgraceful new low and shows exactly the reason why my elastic buffer zones are so necessary. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's what she's thinking. Yeah, in other words, buffer zones need to expand and expand. I mean, she'd like them to cover the whole country. She's as good as said that. And that's what's underlying what she said here. She said, I'm concerned that the misinformation spread by J.D. Vance has empowered some of the most reactionary and misogynistic forces in our country. Are you some of the most misogynistic force in the country? No?
No, I'm actually just somebody who's had an abortion and actually seen the damage that it did to me for a long, long time. And I want to be a voice to protect the unborn and to protect women.
Okay, I mean, Gillian Mackay, if you want to explain how that's misogynistic, I would love to hear. The other thing we've got here is this idea that, like, J.D. Vance it's almost he created the pro-life movement in Scotland out of nothing almost. And this is what's made all these people start doing these things. I mean, the pro-life movement's been going on for decades in Scotland. The Family Party's been doing what we've been doing for years. But there's this strange creation myth has emerged that, like, J.D. Vance kicked all of this off. So Gillian Mackay continues, I will contact Police Scotland and help them in any way I can to determine if there were any breaches of my act. It's always my act. It's not just the law. It's Gillian Mackay's law. I don't know if that's actually the official name of it, but she talks of it as if it is. And stop these shocking protests. I mean, how shocking? I mean, 18,000 fairy lights. That's absolutely shocking. I mean, maybe 3,000 or 4,000 wouldn't be too bad, but 18,000, I mean, that's just utterly shocking. And the harm they're causing people. So what harm did we do to anyone? People seeking vital health care. Well, that's a sort of separate issue. But the clinic was closed while we were there. So that's just total nonsense. But again, we need to remind ourselves, Gillian Mackay, let's not try to make too much sense of it. Police Scotland have been approached for a comment by the National, and we'll assume they didn't give one. Lucas added, for us it was a very peaceful and calm event and a time for reflection. People in the vicinity just went berserk. There is real hatred of the pro-life movement being stirred up by politicians and the media. Okay, just to look at the law to show you why it doesn't apply. So here we go. Number one, a person who is in a safe access zone for protected premises commits an offence if the person does an act with the intention of, or is reckless as to whether the act has the effect of, influencing the decision of another person to access, provide or facilitate the provision of abortion services at the protected premises. Okay, so that's the crime. You're not allowed to influence someone, their decision to access abortion services, basically. But then the last part of it says where in each case the other person, in other words, the person being influenced, is in the safe access zone for the purpose of accessing, providing or facilitating the provision of abortion services at the protected premises. In other words, to commit the crime, you need to be influencing or attempting to influence or whatever a person who is within the buffer zone for the purpose of accessing the abortion clinic. If the abortion clinic is closed, no one can be in the buffer zone for the purpose of accessing the abortion clinic. Therefore, the crime can't be committed, as the police obviously knew when they came, and as we know. But the National and Gillian Mackay don't seem to know that. Again, let's just emphasise that again. Gillian Mackay, who repeatedly talks about my law, doesn't understand it. Now we'll finish by looking at a few more comments on the national newspaper website. First one here, note the man at the loudspeaker is not a Scot. Well, for most of the video they showed, it was our North East chairman, who's as Scottish as they come. And then I was speaking for a couple of minutes. But that's just Scottish, classic Scottish nationalism, isn't it?
Yeah, it seems like anti-English bigotry to me.
Yeah, which I've experienced on several occasions from SNP supporters in particular, go back home, that sort of thing. I think for them in Scotland, if you come from Nigeria, if you come from Mexico, if you come from Poland, welcome New Scot. If you come from England, different matter. But that's the dark underside of Scottish nationalism. How about the next comment here? So, anti-abortion protesters intimidating women should be jailed. They are evil people.
Just want to ask Mary Brown if she's ever actually sat down and had a conversation and drawn somebody out about why they're involved in pro-life witness.
I mean, I just don't think she needs to do that. I mean, she reads the national newspaper, so she'll have heard from both sides in the newspaper she reads, I don't think. Right, next one, Peter Dowd. The simplest solution is to extend the buffer zone from 200 metres to 300 miles and keep all the crackpots south of Hadrian's Wall. Now, that's sort of Gillian Mackay's philosophy. It's laid out in a humorous, clear way, but that's the direction we're heading into. Obviously, being the national, it has to be in terms of getting them out of Scotland. But of course, they were saying that we're actually from America. So getting us over Hadrian's Wall is not going to help. I assume they'd want us to get on our planes back to Texas or whatever. And the last comment we'll look at, Margaret Usher here. She said, maybe the anti-abortionists would like to start earlier in the reproduction cycle by targeting pubs, clubs, football grounds, etc. and offer prayers, free condoms or leaflets about safe sex. They could even add information about vasectomies if they think it would help their cause. Right, Margaret, actually, that's a valid issue to raise. So it's like saying if you're pro-life, if you don't want abortion to be taking place, what else are you going to look at to try and create a situation that's going to minimise the demand for abortion? Okay, fair enough point. But leaflets about safe sex? I mean, do you really think people end up having abortions because they didn't realise that having sex could result in getting pregnant? Because they didn't know what contraception was? Really? I think that's not the case at all. And in terms of contraception, I mean, there's plenty of contraception around. The abortion rate goes up and up and up. It's not that there's some sort of national condom shortage that's resulted in more and more abortions. With contraception, say a form of contraception, let's say it's 99% effective. That means a couple have sex twice a week for a year. It'll probably go wrong once. So within a few years, she's going to probably end up pregnant. So they're not the answer. The answer is a culture of responsibility, commitment, marriage, and seeing sex as the baby-making thing. So if you don't want to make a baby, don't have sex. That's the sort of culture we need to recapture. But having said that, and we do try and do all those things, but we're not going to delay the stopping the killing of the unborn until all sorts of other things are in place. The killing of the unborn is such a grave issue that needs to be stopped immediately. So our 18,000 lights, right? Quite a response there in Aberdeen. Who knows where we'll take them next? I think we've got a few more weeks of the darker evenings. We might be able to do that, and we'll see what sort of reaction we get. But meanwhile, thanks, Mary, for coming on, and we're now going to head off to the shooting range. So thanks for watching.